So today we're gonna talk a little bit about our outdoor activities, and not only are we going to talk about the 2 that we completed today as part of our little mini Powderhorn, we're also going to talk about what is Powderhorn, and we are going to learn about a 3rd way to do outdoor activities as well. So. There you go. Now, this first part, let's put the outing and scouting. Now, some of these quotes have already been used in this course, so you're going to see them again. So, Baden-Powell, from the very beginning of scouting, Lord Robert Baden-Powell, made it he made it very clear that going out into the outdoors is part of what makes scouting what is scouting. A boy on joining wants to begin scouting right away. We saw this one earlier in the week. A week of camp life is worth 6 months of theoretical teaching in the meeting room. The open air is the real objective of scouting and the key to its success. We saw this one as well. Boys can see adventure in a dirty old duck puddle, and if the scoutmaster is a boy's man, he can see it too. A boy is not a sitting down animal. We saw this one previously this week too. A fisherman does not bait his hook with the food he likes. He uses food the fish likes. So with boys. The man who is blind to the beauties of nature has missed half the pleasure of life. Camp is what the boy looks forward to in scouting. So outdoor activities are what make scouting scouting. And sometimes we get lost in advancement and in other things that scouting offers, and we forget about this important part of making sure that boys and girls now have a scouting experience that includes the outdoors. I haven't seen many Powderhorn medallions on uniforms. How many Powderhorn graduates we got here? Oh, look at that, good. We got 4 of you in here. So Powderhorn, one of my loves, is what I've always referred to as a day camp for adults. And more recently they added the older youth in as well. But it is an excellent fun time to do what we did today. You saw today with the Cope course and with shooting sports, 2 of the activities that could be offered in a Powderhorn course. And you saw it was just fun. We didn't worry about the how or anything technical. It was just jump in and do it. Here's some safety requirements, do it, have fun. And we did that. The purpose of a Powderhorn course is to introduce the leaders and the older youth to many outdoor activities. And just to dip their toe in, like we did today. We dipped our toe in Cope. You did a couple of events maybe, and are you an expert? No. Could you put it on yourself? No. But are you scared to take your scouts to go do something like that now, if you had facilities like we had today, or similar? That's what Powderhorn's all about, is letting you dip your toe in so that then you're comfortable when a scout comes and says, hey, Mr. Scoutmaster, we want to go spelunking. Well, do you know how to go spelunking? I don't either. It's not something I have a lot of experience with. But Powderhorn can give you the resources you need locally to be able to offer that type of program to your scouts if it's something they're interested in. The current version of Powderhorn, it's a council-sponsored training, just like Wood Badge is. The minimum is a 3-day course, the maximum is a 6-day course, and they must offer at least 12 activities, up to 24 officially, and then maybe a few additional ones that get thrown in depending on where you are.
Just real quick, I've never even heard of this before today. Is it going on in our council? Mike, you heard of this?
Yeah, our council, yeah, it's coming in our council, it's coming up.
They have it once a year, or how often?
This is the first I've seen it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
But like everything, but it is coming up, it's called Powder Horn.
Dad, when did you do your powder horn? It's been several years ago, 2018.
Okay.
I've seen it on patches.
and if your council doesn't offer it, find the next council over that does and go do it. It's a lot of fun. So here's something else that is a tenet of powder horn that you experienced today, probably. Challenge by choice. So how many of you were really scared to do some of those COPE events? And if your hand's not up, you're probably lying. Okay, so.
Unless you're Justin.
But did you get encouraged by those around you to take that first step?
Yes.
You did. Did anyone force you to do it?
Felt like it.
It felt like it?
Peer pressure, no.
So it's not something you force people to do. So if you show up at COPE and you get all clipped in and you're standing there and you can't take that first step, that's okay. You back off and the next time you have that opportunity. And in fact, that happened to me when I was a youth. I was terrified of rappelling. And taking that first step over the lip is excruciating. And the first time I did it, I got all locked in and I had my feet over the edge and I was backing over there like, just go, it's fine. And that rope was doing this. And I couldn't do it. I pulled back up. And everyone was encouraging, nobody made fun of me, and like 2 months later, I got back up there and I did it. You got something to add?
He said 30% of all scouts and adults have that reaction. You're not alone.
Oh, I know I'm not alone. And I know I'm not alone.
So real quick question.
It's called intelligence.
12 to 24 activities, what do those, are they all?
So, shooting sports is one.
Sure.
COPE is another.
Water.
There are different water sports. We can go in.
It's usually like 18.
No, there's not. That's kind of the beauty of powder horn is it's really open-ended.
Adventure activities.
They're all high adventure
All high
activities.
adventure.
All high
If I
adventure.
might, the one I attended was at Camp Hunt on Bear Lake. So they had a range of water aquatic activities. They may have offered, say, 12, 15 events, but you only had to do 8 or something like that in order to meet the requirements. So you could pick and choose what you could
kayak,
do.
you could canoe, you could.
That's
The
right.
hardest event was for me was try to ride a mountain bike because I have a leg that doesn't work.
Oh yeah, that's
But you know, I took that just, and it was a great opportunity.
Challenge by choice. You chose to give it a shot, and you did it. Very cool. All right, so what I would like to do now is I'd like for a couple of you to talk about your experiences today. I don't want to take 30 minutes to do it, but I think it's really important that we share some of the small victories that we had today, either probably in COPE, but maybe in shooting. And I'm looking for 2 or 3 of you who'd be willing to share. Go ahead.
Well, so I mean, I said this earlier, but some of you are going to be bored again with this. But a few weeks ago, I took my troop to the COPE course at in Ogden Scout Center. And some of them were doing a high COPE because they had earned a merit badge. Other hadn't earned a merit badge, so they were doing it. And some of the other parents have been Eagle Scouts have been to Philmont and were going up on it. And they asked me if I wanted to do it. I said, no, I don't want to do it. I'm busy filling out fishing yard badge cards. It just wasn't something that I thought I could be able to do. The reason being is, A, I feel I'm old. I'm turning 60. I'm overweight, and I just had my shoulder repaired 2 Novembers ago. So I figured I was at a disadvantage of my 30-year-old self. But today, I went out there and I did it. I sent my Citizen Scout Master's pictures, and they were proud of me to do it. It was just something that I got over that hump because I thought that I would be able to do it. You know, I didn't do it. I got encouraged by, the only discouraging part was watching Justin prance around like he was a deer in the meadow that you see because he's so proficient. It's like, oh, how do I? But I went across that log and back, and I was very proud of myself. Also climbing the wall, I was very proud of myself.
Awesome. You should be. We witnessed
Yeah, you
it.
did great.
Yeah, it was awesome to see you like get there and come back.
And your daughters
Yeah, it was awesome.
filming it and sharing down below.
It was also awesome to know your limits too. But yeah,
I just pushed the limit.
yeah, go ahead.
further.
Well done.
Chuck,
Yeah.
I've got to share with the group here about Kimball kind of setting the bar. Because I thought, oh, okay, I might go up there and try this, you know, and I was watching other people and everybody's making and Justin's doing his thing. and you know, he's circumventing the whole platform 3 times. So I just kind of sat there and I watched for a while. Of course, Neil's taking photographs all over the place. But then I watched Kimball get out there, and he took on one of those difficult, in fact, I don't think there were any easy ones, to be honest. There was maybe the balance beam might be a warm-up. But he kind of, by doing that, just by setting his standard for himself and testing himself, he kind of put the message out there, anybody else want to try this? And it's not like I felt there was peer pressure, it was like an obligation. So I thought, oh, what the heck? Then I saw him start to rappel up the side of the jet. And I went, oh my God. Oh, please help me. I gotta do that now? Oh, please. So I found myself following in his footsteps because he set the bar so high, but at the same time he brought this team together to go, yeah! And it was like troll spirit, just add water, Kim was gonna set it, and here we go. I saw scouting spirit, I saw people supporting each other and cheering each other on and doing kind of insane stuff with the upside down monkey trick you did there, Dustin. I had to comment, I was moved to comment on the idea that somebody was willing to face all those fears and put his trust in the group for the support so that he could accomplish the person's growth trade-off in this process. It was impressive to watch. I was moved. Actually, the thing that started it off was he was feeling overwhelmed by the surroundings, being in the outdoors, the smells of the trees, the wind going by, and the view of the tube, you know, all the above.
There was a lot.
And I'm going to guess he drew inspiration from that, and it just made it risk-free at that point. I'm going to go ahead and try this. Yeah. Which means everybody else has a chance to go ahead and try.
To add to that, I was talking to him, and he was doing his best to talk himself out of it.
Yeah.
He was doing his best. I don't know, I haven't done this since I was like, you know, I don't know if I should do it, you know, I'm going to do the easiest one. But then he climbed towards those ropes. It was like it was at Hogle Zoo and seeing the guys go across there and behind the glass thing. And you did a great job.
Thank you.
Think positive.
It was inspirational.
Yeah, because it was not easy for me going down that wall. And it was, but in order to do that, if I may, it was because Rachel and Matt and Lynn and Justin and Trevor and, you know, it just was everyone, you know. In fact, I was Rachel's like, listen, just follow me, kid. You know, like, it was very much, and actually, the path I chose is because I was following Rachel, and I saw, Rachel, you were gonna be where I was gonna go. And I was like, and you were like, come on, we got it. And then I got there, you're like, how you doing? I was like, I'm good because you're doing good. And then until we got down, you're like, just so you know, I mean, you were cool as a cucumber. Just so you know, I was a 10 of fear. And I was like, you were not emoting that. Good leader. So
It really did. I've done so much, and I've been pretty brave through a lot. But having a few injuries with health problems has set me to, like, I'm vulnerable, I'm fragile, and it's no fun. But I was at a 10 to what I felt I could handle physically, mentally, and emotionally. And it was something I wasn't prepared for.
yeah.
That
Awesome.
of myself.
It's awesome.
Well, thank you guys for sharing all that. I hope we get some time to hear some more of that in the next, we're almost done, in the next day or so. All right.
But honestly, we left that feeling like, I love you all.
Yeah, I left really connected with all of us on the tower.
Right,
Very much. Yeah. It was magic. It was scouting magic, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. It was magic.
Like,
I mean, a little bit brought me a little to tears. I was like, Matt, I don't even know how to say what I'm feeling right now. When we got to the ground on the wall.
3 miles away.
Then he started breathing.
Yeah.
yes, feet firmly on the ground, we were able to stop.
You didn't kiss the ground.
Yeah, it was very sweet.
All right, moving ahead.
Thanks.
How many of you went to Rayado this week, to the museum? Most of you. Okay, so outdoor living history is another of the options at Powderhorn. And it can be something as organized as Rayado is, with reenactors and all that, or something as simple as a roadside ruin that you've taken 20 minutes to look up on Google. So I want to tell you a little bit about Rayado that they didn't tell you about at the museum itself, because they're in 1853 and they're trying to portray a certain time period. So they don't really talk about what came before and what goes after. So this land and the land that Rayado is on and all of Philmont and most of everything you can see if you go out there and do a 360 was part of the Maxwell Land Grant. And the Spanish and Mexican governments in the 1840s were giving away land to individuals who were willing to colonize them. And the reason they wanted colonies was because all this land was in dispute. So this land was claimed by Mexico, where we're sitting right now. It was also claimed by the Republic of Texas at the time. And so Mexico wanted to say, this is ours. Go put a town out there and put a Mexican flag on it so that we can say, look, we've even colonized. We're good. This is us, not you. And so that's why they were giving away land. And there was a guy named Charles Beaubien. He changed his name to Carlos so he could fit in. But he really wanted in on this, but the problem was he was French. And the Mexican government wasn't really giving away land to Frenchmen, so he had to go find a friend. And so he had a buddy named Guadalupe Miranda. And Miranda was the secretary to the governor of Santa Fe at the time. So if we look in here, actually, I skipped this part because we're running out of time already. These are some of the early people that lived on the grant, starting with the Anasazi Indians over there, the Hickory Apache, the Pueblo, and of course the conquistadors came. And then you had the French and American settlers and from other nationalities as well, doing their thing on the land. But you've got this guy Beaubien who wanted land, Miranda who was working for the Mexican government as a Mexican citizen, and he worked for that guy, Manuel Armijo, who was the governor of Santa Fe. And so Beaubien talked Miranda into going and applying for this grant with him so that he could use his Mexican citizenship to get the grant. And it took them a couple years, but they finally got the grant. And then there's this guy named Lucian Maxwell, and it's his name that's on the grant today. And he came in and married Beaubien's daughter right after he'd acquired all the land. And this is his daughter here. Of course, that's in her older years. She was 13 when he married her. That's what she looked like shortly before her death. So, then we had this guy named Kit Carson, which you learned a little bit about at Rayado. Now, he was, for the time, he was a linguist, a very gifted linguist. He spoke lots of languages, and that's why he was sought after all the time, because he spoke all these Indian languages. He was also illiterate in all of his languages. He learned how to sign his name, which, well, that card's gone, but that's okay.
Right there at the bottom, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, there it is, right there. Okay. He learned how to sign his name, and that's it. But he was invaluable to talking to the Indians. He had a reputation of being an Indian killer, but that came from dime store novels, from fiction that was written about him at the time. And he was really angry about that when he learned about it, that they were writing that kind of stuff about him. Because he really was friends to anyone that, anytime he could avoid a fight, he did. So, Maxwell was supposed to colonize, and he bought all of Miranda's shares during the Mexican-American War, which was the time of the Mormon Battalion and all that we talked about earlier. Maxwell bought Miranda's half when Miranda went back to Mexico. So he had half the grant. His father-in-law had the other half. And so he decided he was going to go and create the town of Rayado to meet the needs of this grant that they had agreed to. So he built this home down here that you drove past, the one in the bottom left there. You drove past that before you got to the museum. And then that top picture is what the museum building looked like before it was restored. And as the crow flies, it was 30 miles from Fort Union, which is a national monument that you can visit sometime.
Whereabouts?
It is down on I-25 near the town of Watrous. It's south of here, yes.
About an hour and a half drive.
North of Santa Fe?
Yes, north of Santa Fe.
By Las Vegas?
Before
Las Vegas.
I need a map.
So it's a really cool place to visit.
Las Vegas.
Oh, I was laughing, I thought that was a joke. Before Las Vegas was like, I hope so.
You know, strangely, the Las Vegas you're talking about was named after the one in New Mexico. That's a story for another time. All right, so Fort Union, actually Rayado acted as Fort Union before Fort Union was Fort Union. There were dragoons stationed at Rayado that eventually, as soon as Fort Union was finished, they were relocated to the fort.
Which fort?
Because
there was 3 Union forts.
Well, they came in succession. So it was the first one that got torn down, then the Star Fort was built, and then the main one. So 10 years after Rayado was founded, Kit Carson was getting kind of old. He was ready to retire. He moved back to Taos. And this is his home down in the bottom right corner. It's a museum in Taos now if you'd like to go see it sometime. Lucian Maxwell moved to Cimarron, which wasn't a town yet. He built this, that's a model of his mansion that he built there. It no longer exists. That's what it looked like right before its final fire in 1924.
Whereabouts? You know?
It was right across from the St. James Hotel.
Okay.
There's a 1950s little house there now. All right, so in 1870, Lucian sold the grant to a bunch of English investors. And this is because the other grants in the area were being challenged after the Mexican-American War, and now the United States was taken over. And so some of the landowners were losing their land who had land grants similar to Lucian's. And so he decided to try to sell it before he was challenged. And he managed to do that in 1870. He sold it for $1.7 million, which is, even in today's money, only about 79 cents an acre. So he had to kind of sell it at a discount to get rid of it. Yeah.
You said English, you sold it to Englishmen or
Yeah,
Americans?
Englishmen.
Really?
Yeah, Englishmen. All right, so these Englishmen show up and think they're getting a clear piece of land, but there's people living all over it, and it started a war. That's also a story for another time, but it was a big part of the New Mexico history of this area. It's called the Colfax County War. slide. I've lost control of my slides. There we go, thank you. So Maxwell took his $1.7 million and he headed to Fort Sumner, New Mexico, where that fort had just been decommissioned, and he bought it from the federal government, and he refurbished the nicest building on it into his home, which is this one here. He lived there for 5 years, and then he died. And he's buried there in the Fort Cemetery. Now, the reason I'm telling you this story is because this is how you take something that something that might be boring to Boy Scouts. They go to Rayado and they see, ooh, blacksmithing, and they're talking about about all this other stuff that they don't care about. I guarantee you that if you say Billy the Kid, they're like, what? What are you talking about? So, to tie this story now to Billy the Kid. So Maxwell had this house, he died. His son, Pete, inherited it. There's, oh, no. There's Pete, there on the left. And so he's living in the house with his little sister and his elderly mom. And little sister has a boyfriend. And that boyfriend is Billy the Kid. And you might know the story of how Billy the Kid died if you've seen any of the old movies, that he was shot in the back by Pat Garrett, which is the most likely the correct story, although there are several other legends. You might even know that he was visiting a woman, but you probably didn't know that was Paulina Maxwell, and that he was killed on the property, on the fort, where she lived, which ties the end of the Billy the Kid story back to Philmont, which is pretty cool.
Question?
Yes.
So, just because you say most likely he was shot in the back. Why? Is that because if someone was facing him, they wouldn't have been quick enough?
Well, there's only one.
Shot?
Only Pat Garrett knows what happened because there was no one else around, and that's the story he told. But there are several other stories that he survived and was killed in other places later. It's most likely, though, that Pat Garrett's story is the truthful one.
Pat Garrett said he shot him in the back.
Yeah. In his autobiography.
And Billy the Kid's been in the hotel down here in Cimarron.
That's right, he has.
Kids like it or not.
This is the cover of a historical fiction novel about their love affair. But it's the coolest picture of them together, so I grabbed it for this. All right. So, to finish up, outdoor living history could be a lecture like this, but it probably isn't. It could be a visit to Rayado. Probably isn't in most places where you live. Maybe you have something like that. But for example, on my powderhorn course, when I was powderhorn course director a few years back, we went to the NRA Whittington Center down the street here, and there's a ghost town there. And it's an old mining town. And I took my entire course there, and I stood in front of the mine entrance, and I read this 4-sentence description that I got off of the NRA's website. I said, during its heyday, actually I memorized it, I'm reading it to you now because I don't have it memorized anymore. But during its heyday, there were more than 1,200 miners and their families in this town called Van Houten, and it was developed by the Raton Coal and Fuel Company at the turn of the century. And the town had its own dairy, golf course, and even a baseball team. It was abandoned in 1952, but not lost to history. And I said something similar to those words. I pointed out a couple of things that I had looked at on the map previously, that I knew what the ruins were, and then I let them explore. And they loved it. They spent 45 minutes there just tromping through the weeds, going to look at all the different places, and it was a really cool activity. It didn't cost any money. The NRA Whittington Center is free. It cost me about 10 minutes worth of research and about 20 minutes worth of memorization, and it was a really, really neat experience. So you can do outdoor living history on the cheap if you want. All right, I believe I'm out of time, so I will step aside.